So the CHIPS Act apparently has passed in the House, and now it's going to go on to the desk of President Biden, where I'm sure he'll be instructed to sign it, and dutifully, I'm sure he'll be very obedient in that matter, and he will sign it. I have no doubt about that. This is really unprecedented, this bill. I can't think of anything else similar to it. So I think it sets a very bad precedent in terms of what they call crony capitalism, corporatocracy, plutocracy, socialism for the rich, and rugged individualism for everybody else. But at least in the past, with so-called pork barrel spending, it has been a case where there would be public projects or nonprofit that would benefit from so-called pork barrel spending. I mean, say like the Bridge to Nowhere, at least that would have been the public would have owned that bridge. Or it would have been a nonprofit organization that would, like such as a Teapot Museum or whatever. At least they're not like a capitalist organization. But in the case of the CHIPS Act, that involves $52 billion of just complete giveaway to these corporations, chip manufacturers, and that the public gets nothing, absolutely nothing in return. We do no equity. We're not acting as creditors. We're not going to get paid back ever. At least in the case with something like TARP, the 2008 TARP Troubled Assets Relief Program, where those were either loans to these businesses that were in trouble, or it was purchase of their equity or the stocks in those corporations by the federal government, and even so that then at least we got something in return. In the case of when the U.S. government bought stocks in those companies, in some cases, the people were able to realize a nice gain after we ended up selling those shares. The federal government sold the shares once the Great Recession started alleviating, and so the share prices in those companies that we bought shares in through the TARP program, once the share price rose, and then the federal government was able to sell many of those shares for a nice gain, actually. Or you could say, like in the case of the Solyndra debacle, that was also a loan. But here, with the case of the CHIPS Act, there's no loans, no purchase of equity. The shares of these chip manufacturers that we are giving them money, their share price could go to the moon. They can give huge stock option bonuses to their executives. They could just go. It wouldn't matter. They give up large amounts, billions in dividends. We, the people, get nothing back. It's just a complete gift. This $52 billion in the CHIPS Act is just total giveaway. I think it's comparable to, in the past, what's been ongoing for many years, of professional sports stadiums, where we give that's usually on a state level, where there's the sports teams will say, oh, if you don't build us a new stadium and pay for it, we'll just leave town. And so therefore, people say, oh, well, we guess we got to give them the money, even though they're like in the case here in Minnesota, we ended up giving being about $1 billion to build a new professional football stadium, and owned by largely a New Jersey billionaire real estate developer, but we don't get any of the ticket revenue or the broadcast rights to the football games or anything like that. We just give them the money. so that they'll stay here in Minnesota. Just a year. So that's the case. That's kind of a similar thing going on here with the CHIPS Act, where it was that's the rationale where we're thinking, well, if we don't give them the money, these manufacturers, then they won't bring their production back to the U.S., reshore the production. So we think, well, if we don't do that, if we don't give them the money, well, then they're never going to come back here back to the States, and so I guess that's what we have to do. That's the rationale. That's the reasoning, anyways. But they're not even considering the possibility of doing something like the TARP program, where we could just, okay, you really need that money, then, and that's the only way for you to bring back manufacturing. Okay, well, then we're going to loan you the money, or we're going to buy some of your shares of your companies. Okay, there you go. We're going to loan it to you, but you got to pay us back. At least do that. But no, we're just giving the money to these chip manufacturers under the rationale that it's considered vital, and with all the tension going on over in Taiwan, and they're the primary manufacturer of these silicon chips that we need. There's a concern that, what if China blockades Taiwan and we can't get the chips here? So we better do something. And of course, the Pelosi's reckless plan to fly there to visit their Taiwan only makes it worse. But of course, if things really get bad soon, I mean, it takes years to build these chip fabs here in the U.S. So that it won't matter if things really get hot. But anyways, there's also another possibility that no one is considering, is that, well, if it's this vital, then why can't we just manufacture chips here and I mean, nationalize the manufacturing of chips so that it's the publicly owned manufacturing of the chips? So I suppose people would say, oh, that's like communist. Well, I'd say, oh, so what? The thing is to just make sure that what's important is to differentiate between the principle of communism and all the Marxist communist parties of the past and present. So that just as I'm able to differentiate between the principle of democracy and the Democratic Party, I think it's important to differentiate between the principle of communism and the Communist Party. For some reason, people, I mean, I've grown to despise the Democratic Party in general, but I still generally believe and support the principle of democracy. And so that goes the same with the principle of communism. Generally, I'm against Marxism, and therefore I'm also against the communist parties that are based on the principles of Marxism. I still think that the principle of communism, that is communal ownership, has its place in the socioeconomic system. And that's where I think chip manufacturing and also other manufacturing, where the market system is not working properly to provide our needs and wants on a reasonably priced manner, and also just a reasonable, a regular, reliable supply is not being reached through the competitive capitalist marketplace. Where that is not happening, then we should develop a communally owned system where the government owns the means of production, but not a Marxist, just a pragmatic, practical government owning the means of production, so that we meet the needs and wants of a first world society like here in the US. So that we could also do it something like follow the same principle of something like medical devices and prescription medicines that are either or both overpriced, grossly overpriced, and inadequately supplied through the competitive marketplace. And the same thing can go for chips. manufacturing, computer chip manufacturing. Some may counter, well, the government never has been able to make anything. Well, there's actually an exception to that has been going on for many decades quietly, and that is what was formerly known as the Government Printing Office, and now is known as the Government Publishing Office of the United States. They have for many decades, have manufactured books, pamphlets, brochures, and you still can go to, they have a website, you can go to the Government Publishing Office and purchase books, brochures, pamphlets. The government, U.S. government, is making a product, and they've done so successfully for many decades. So if the government can make books, why can't they make chips or medical devices or prescription medicines? There's no reason that I can think of why they could not, other than well, there is no good reason. But the reason why that's not happening, I believe, is because corporations do not want that to happen. That would dig into their profits, and they would not like that. And it seems like the corporations are running Congress and politics in this country. That's wherein there lies the problem. We're in a corporatocracy, not a democracy. So I'm just putting this idea out here where we could nationalize chip manufacturing, the manufacture of computer chips, medical devices, prescription medicines. We would solve a lot of our problems, and there's no reason why this could not carry forward. Some may also, one counter argument might be, well, the government does not own some of the patents needed to manufacture such items, but we all know that the federal government cannot be sued unless they agree to allow themselves to be sued in a lawsuit. So what are these corporations that own the patents, what are they going to do if the government just uses them? I mean, they could just, federal government could declare eminent domain over this intellectual property, and the government could still compensate the owners of that intellectual property, pay them a reasonable fees for to use those patents. But I'm sure it will not be anywhere close to the kind of exorbitant profits that they're currently realizing under the monopoly profits that they normally get through having those that those patent rights allow those corporations. So they're not going to like that at all. Even if they get a little bit of a stipend from the government paying for the patent rights to utilize those patents. But it's something that could be done. It is a possibility. There's no physical limitations to doing that, and I don't think there's any legal obstacle to doing those, to implementing such a program of nationalizing the manufacture of computer chips, medical devices, prescription medicines. We could do it. I hope we do start doing it. I'm just putting that idea out there. Hope some people are listening and actually pressure their members of Congress to follow through with that idea. So that's so I get that idea out there. And if you're watching, thanks for watching.